Today I'm going to share with you an experiment that I decided to do, making 2 different hot sauces, 2 different methods. This one being lacto fermented for a month and a half. This one being made from fresh ingredients. The results are very interesting, very delicious, but very different. Is one better than the other? Let's find out. Okay, let's talk about these ingredients. Based on ingredients, we have 10 ounces of blueberries, 15 habaneros, we have a teaspoon's worth of anise seeds. The rest of the ingredients are gonna be similar, but they're not gonna be the same amounts, okay? The first version I wanna go over is the lacto fermented version. I've had these ingredients sitting in this brine for about a month and a half. That process is incredibly simple, so let's go over that process real quick.
To start, cut the peppers in quarters. Seed removal is optional. Place a mason jar onto the scale, tear it, and add your ingredients. Cutting the peppers into quarters allows you to add more peppers to the jar, and it also eliminates any possibilities of air bubbles getting trapped. The blueberries are perfectly fine being kept whole. Next, you want to fill the jar up with water up to the bottom of the neck of the jar. I prefer to use filtered water, or you could use a bottle of spring water. You want to make sure the ingredients stay submerged underneath that water level. Very important. Now you want to take this, weight 837 grams, and multiply that by 2.5%, and this is going to give you the amount of salt that you need to make the brine. 20.925 grams, and round to the nearest whole number, which is 21 grams. Now you want to pour a little bit of the water out from the jar into a dish. Place a small dish onto the scale, tear it, and add the calculated amount of salt, which is 21 grams. Now add the salt to the water, mix thoroughly to dissolve the salt. Now you want to take your newly made brine and place it back into the jar with the ingredients. I really want to emphasize that you need to keep the ingredients underneath that brine level. This is an anaerobic environment. This is where the lactic acid bacteria thrives. Now you want to force the issue with keeping the ingredients underneath that brine level. This is where your fermentation weight comes into play. I usually just use a little jar or a glass dish that I have laying around the house, but if you have an actual fermentation weight, you could definitely use that. You want to keep the opening of this jar covered. If you have a lid with an airlock on it, you could definitely use that, or you could do what I'm doing with a coffee filter and a mason jar lid ring just to secure it in place. I like to keep my fermentation projects on a glass dish to catch any kind of overspill that may occur. You want to let this ferment on the countertop or in your pantry away from direct sunlight at room temperature. 68 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit is best for a month and a half. Little tiny bubbles should start to form after day 4 or 5. That is a perfect sign that fermentation is well on its way.
I want to halt the fermentation process for a couple of reasons. Number 1 being flavor profile is going to change over time if you let it keep fermenting. Number 2 is I want to have those ingredients nice and soft when I go to blend the sauce, okay? One thing I do like to look for is make sure there's no mold, no yeast, nothing like that. If you have a pH meter, I highly suggest that you check the pH now before continuing on in the process, because I want to make sure that the fermentation process took and it held throughout that month-long fermentation process, right? Of course, we're working with food safety, so we want to make sure that everything is spot on. I'm looking for something less than 4.6. This is sitting at 3.9, which is perfect. All the contents in the jar is going to get put in the stock pot. We want to bring this up to simmer on medium high heat, and then reduce that heat to medium low and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. To this, I have a teaspoon's worth of anise. Anise really works well with those blueberries. It's going to give it a really great flavor profile. We just crank this on medium high heat. Bring it up to simmer. Since these are habaneros, I recommend that you keep a lid on. The stock pot is going to keep all those fumes at bay. I have my kitchen window wide open. These fumes are nasty. They're habanero peppers. It's going to make you cough. It's going to make you sneeze. It's going to burn your eyes. So while this is doing this thing, I'm going to set it to the side, and then we'll talk about the other process. Being that we're not fermenting these ingredients, we need to get flavor another way, of course. We need the sauce to have a good flavor profile, nice depth of flavor. So with the habanero peppers, you don't really need to cut the tops off. Rinse them under cold running water, of course, and then make sure there's no visual moldy spots. Yank the stem off. If you're brand new to working with hot peppers, I recommend that you wear rubber gloves. Capsaicin and habanero peppers definitely will burn your skin. Next, you just want to have the peppers. Make sure the insides of them are looking really nice. Get rid of any nasty spots. Having a sharp knife is also really important. All these peppers are halved in the stock pot. If you're not going to strain the sauce, then I do recommend removing the seeds. Being that we're not fermenting it, we need to get the most amount of flavor out of these ingredients that we possibly can. That's where we add a bit more vinegar to this. This is a half of a cup of peach cider vinegar. A little bit more liquid is some water. And like the other sauce, I'm going to add a little bit of anise. We got to add a little bit of salt to it, and then freshly cracked black pepper. So we're going to simmer this with the vinegar and the water. What that's going to do is we're going to release a lot of liquid that's in the blueberries and the habaneros, and we're going to reduce that liquid, concentrating those flavors with those anise seeds, with the salt, with the pepper. You're going to get a really nice depth of flavor. Remember, we're not fermenting these ingredients. We're starting from fresh ingredients and then cooking them down with vinegar. We have great flavor out of that fermented sauce. We're gonna get great flavor out of this non-fermented sauce. We're gonna compare the two, of course, at the very end of the video, right? Which one's gonna taste better? I'm curious to find out. Lacto fermented ingredients for a month and a half, or using fresh ingredients and then really just focusing on the cooking technique, getting great flavor. So this burner's being tied up, so we gotta go to this burner, crank it on, medium high heat, bring it up to simmer it for about 20 minutes. You can see the fumes kind of going out, which is the fumes that are gonna make you cough. If I didn't have a lid on it, it would just be going all over the place. So I could kind of guide the fumes with the pot, right? Going out that window. That's what you want. Reduce the heat to medium-low, let it simmer for about 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes is done, then I'm gonna kill the heat, let it sit for another 10 minutes, blend it up. One thing that you really want to do is let this cool off after it simmers for about 10 minutes. Blending hot liquids can be quite dangerous. I mean, you can see this is still steaming. Internally speaking, when I blend things, I like to have the ingredients covered about halfway with liquid at first, and then just let it rip on the high for about 30 seconds. If you have a really high power blender, then it'll break up these ingredients a little bit better. One thing that I do want to emphasize is that sauce consistency is a personal preference, as well as having a smooth sauce. Mesh strainer over a bowl. I love that color. This is where a small ladle comes into play. Just lightly press the sauce through the mesh strainer. I have a few videos on the channel showing how to make a seasoned salt out of this pulp. I'll make sure those will link in the description for you. Really, it's just a matter of driving out the pulp, grinding it up, and adding salt to it. So that's it, man. That's sauce number one, lacto fermented for a month and a half. Smells amazing, dude. Smells amazing. The lacto fermentation process really gives this a nice tartness to it, a little bit of sour. Really highlights the flavors that the blueberries and habaneros have. Has a good salt content to it. What I do want to do is add a splash of vinegar to this. This is the same vinegar I used earlier, which is that peach cider vinegar. It's really good. If you can't find this peach cider vinegar, apple cider vinegar will work just fine. Yeah, that's nice. The vinegar adds a nice, just additional flavor profile to it. Kind of helps round everything out. You get the good flavor from the blueberries and the habaneros right up front. The acidity is right up front too. It's not overly spicy, but it's nice. On to sauce number two. It already looks like too much liquid, so I'm gonna pour probably most of this out, and then we're gonna add as we blend. You wanna use your senses when you're making sauces, man. Don't add too much liquid. You start with a little amount and then add. Smooth it out. Sauce looks amazing, has a nice deep purple color to it. Very curious at how different these flavors are. Same thing as last, I wanna strain the sauce. It's looking a little thick, so I might need to add a little bit more water to it, but we'll see once I strain it out. Definitely smells different, looks different. Bet you this would make a really nice dessert sauce. Could already tell that this is gonna be a little on the thick side after it cools. Add a little bit of water to it. Just a little bit, probably like a tablespoon at a time until it gets to the thickness that you want. It has enough vinegar in it, so I wanna use water. But if you want more vinegar forward, then add vinegar instead of water. Try to gear my recipes to fill up one of these small jars. So excited. Right up front, it has a little bit more sugariness to it. It's a bit more acidic, obviously, because you added more vinegar to it. I'd even say that it's a little more spicy too. I'm gonna add just a little pinch of salt to it to help kind of round those flavors out a little bit more. It's not that it's better, it's just different, right? It's good. First visual thing is this from the fresh is a lot more pronounced. The colors are more vibrant. This one, flavors have a little bit more depth to them. Is one better than the other? I don't know, not really. They're just good in their own ways. I'd say that the flavor profile of this one is a little more rounded out, and this one, it's a little more sugary right up front. I like them both, man.